Hi there. My name is Lucas Weiss, and I am the host of the Weesesports Quarantine Chronicles. For today's episode, I'm joined by Alex Myers. Alex is a senior writer at Golf Digest. In this episode, I chat with Alex about the return to golf, his journey into covering the sport, his approach to reporting on the game's biggest tournaments, and his article on Tiger Woods' historic 2019 Masters win. The Weesports Quarantine Chronicles is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So make sure to like, rate, watch, and subscribe to all three of those channels. This is episode 33 of the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles. All right, on today's episode of the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles, I am joined by Alex Myers. He is a senior writer at Golf Digest. Alex, welcome to the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I put on a collared shirt for the first time in over 2 months, so it's a big day.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, I should have gone to my golf attire, but I'm a creature of habit, so I mean, the suit and jacket is for me. But you're my second golf journalist on the show. The first was Sean Martin at PGAtour.com.
Okay.
So, but sure. As I always say, save the better ones for later. So be second better than first. So sorry, Sean, if you're listening. But all kidding aside, I want to start off with your Twitter bio because you're fans of 4 teams that I find rather interesting. I get Wake Forest because you went there, you got to show the alma mater. Yankees, all those championships, of course you got to love them. Giants won 2 Super Bowls in the 21st century. But the New York Knicks, Alex Myers, my condolences. Because I'm a Toronto Maple Leafs follower, and we haven't won the Cup since 1967. But I feel like being a Knicks fan is just the next level of being tormented.
Well, it is. It's brutal. I mean, just think about, the Toronto Raptors have won a championship since the Knicks have. I mean, the Knicks haven't won a championship since way before I was even born. So it's been tough. I was lucky lucky but kind of cursed. When I was growing up, they were a great team and they made some good playoff runs. Of course, as we've seen in this The Last Dance documentary, they always ran into Michael Jordan, and they had some heartbreaking losses when I was in middle school and high school. So that have scarred me deeply since then. But I wish I could go back to that because what we've had in the past 20 years has been just pathetic. So I appreciate the condolences. Hopefully one of these decades, they'll be good again.
And then I want to get to your pinned tweet, which is you playing Jim Nance's par 3 at his house, and not only playing it, but getting some commentary courtesy of Mr. Nance. So did you win a contest? How did that all come about? Because sign me up, because that would be one of life's greatest treasures to play a par 3 with Jim Nance commentating.
I mean, it certainly felt like I won a contest. I actually am lucky enough that Jim writes a monthly column for us, and I've gotten to know him the last couple years. It's not like he's sitting in the cubicle next to me or anything like that, but we've gotten to know each other at some events. He reads and watches everything relating to golf. He is up to date on everything. So when I first introduced myself to him, he knew who I was, and he wasn't just BSing me. Like, he actually was like, "Hey, I liked when you did that." Like, it blew my mind. Such a great guy. And so during the U.S. Open, we were out at Pebble Beach, and of course he wasn't working that week because it wasn't on CBS. And it just came up that he's having some people over, and I got to come over. And the biggest thrill of it all was just his willingness. And I'd heard this would happen, but I didn't believe it till it actually did. His willingness to just jump in there, assume the role of play-by-play guy, and he's so into it. And right before I hit, and I didn't just hit one shot. I hit probably at least 10 balls. But right before, he goes, Alex, Phil Mickelson just made the last hole in one. And it was a video that had gone viral because Phil tweeted it out. And he goes, your name could be on the plaque right underneath Phil Mickelson. So, I mean, he was so into it. He was rooting me on. He was playing the Masters music in the background and the CBS golf music. It was something I'll never forget. It was a big thrill.
Did you feel any pressure, like when hitting those shots?
I did. It's funny though. The only thing I'm good at is the under 75-yard shot. It's my bread and butter. I refer to myself as Mr. 60, Mr. 60 degree around the office. And so I found a 60-degree wedge that he had, and it just kind of like, I told myself, this is your bread and butter. This is what you're good at. And yeah, it was after a couple of swings, I was just locked in and I really was motivated to get on that plaque. Unfortunately, that attempt that I put up there, it really did have a chance, but it missed because I don't have a real hole-in-one in my life either. So, of course, I'm not going to make a hole-in-one at Jim Nance's house.
Don't worry, Alex. On this podcast, I won't ask you that question, so you don't have to worry about that. But you answered it, so thanks for just answering a question I didn't need to ask. But in addition to being good at the 60-degree wedge, you're also a very good writer and a very accomplished golf journalist. And I want to shift gears to talk about your career. And I think starting with how you fell in love with the game of golf, because I think for so many of us, it could be a golf course, it could be watching the game at a young age, or a person. And in your case, it was your grandfather. So maybe just talk about, that, relationship and how he fostered the love of golf for you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was really lucky. One of my grandfathers loved golf. I mean, loved it. And he took me out at a young age, and he lived near a golf course. He would take me over there. We would play after dinner. I loved mini golf. Don't get me wrong. At first, when I was a kid, but I eventually really got into golf. It was so much fun getting to play with him. And unfortunately, he passed away about 10 years ago, but he also got me into watching golf because that's what he did all the time. And he had tickets to the Masters for, I want to say, over 40 years. And I eventually got to use some of those. So that was my first taste of going to the Masters. And so I owe my love of golf 100% to my grandfather. My parents didn't play, never played. And he definitely got me into it. And, but I had a love for all sports too. I really did. And so, my first job out of college was a sports reporter at a newspaper where I covered a lot of things, but golf was one of those things. And that was kind of what I had done at Wake Forest for the school paper too. And, it became the kind of thing that I liked writing about different sports, but if I had to pick one, I probably would pick golf. And so it just happened to kind of go that route. But yes, the love of the game definitely comes from my grandfather. And I'll always be grateful for him for getting me into it because it is such a great game, both to play and to watch.
And, you said that you covered golf at Wake Forest. And I'm just curious about, what did those experiences teach you? Because, of course, you've been around the game before that. You watched the game. So it must have been, you must have had some knowledge coming in, which obviously helped in writing about the game.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And again, very lucky, great timing. And that's, as we keep going through some of my career, that's kind of the key. Very lucky, great timing. I was at golf. I was the same year as Bill Haas, who is a tremendous golfer. He was All-American every year. He was one of the best players in the country. He was Player of the Year his senior year. And so getting to cover college golf for most people wouldn't have probably been that exciting. But for me, it was, because here I was covering a future PGA Tour winner and the son of a great PGA Tour player, and his uncle was the coach, and a historic golf program, which in the 70s, I think Golf World is rated as having the greatest college team of all time. That included Bill Haas's dad, Jay. So, as much as I enjoyed covering the basketball team and football team by the time I became a junior and senior for the paper, covering the golf team all those years was almost as exciting because this was a team that was perennially ranked in the top 5. Again, had the future PGA Tour star. And so getting to interview him, it really felt like a big time assignment. So that definitely got me hooked even more. And again, I didn't get to go to too many events. I got to go to a couple local ones, but just getting that experience was nice. You kind of saw the difference between covering golf, how much more laid back it seemed, in terms of both the atmosphere, but also just the deadlines. I mean, I could drive all the way home and still have plenty of time to write a story versus at a basketball game, you're filing on a deadline at midnight, so I kind of like that feel as well. And, but yeah, it definitely, in terms of writing for a college paper, it's tough to find probably a more exhilarating experience than covering Wake Forest golf. It definitely got me more into it.
And certainly someone like Bill Haas, like you said, I mean,
Yeah.
I remember Bill and that famous shot he hit at East Lake from the water to win
Yes.
the FedEx Cup. Like, I
Yep.
mean, that's, so, those many years later. So,
So exactly.
yeah.
Again, so lucky. And when I look back at Wake Forest, I graduated in 2004. The 4 years I was there, I mean, the sports teams were unbelievable. I mean, we had Josh Howard there in the basketball team. We had Chris Paul's freshman year. The football team went. This was right before they went to the Orange Bowl, but they kind of went to a couple bowl games. They pulled off a big upset against NC State and Phillip Rivers when I was a senior and I was covering. I was up in the press box, so I got to do so many cool things. When you think of going to Wake Forest, it was such a small school. I think it was the smallest Division I football program at the time. I got to do these things because it was such a small school. I got to join the paper really easily. I got to work my way up, but I was also covering big time sports. I got to cover the NCAA tournament and different things like that. So again, I picked a good time. I got lucky, and I had a lot of fun there.
And then you move to the Journal News, and then of course,
Yes.
you mentioned how you were covering different sports in addition to golf. I'm just curious, I know that you focus, strictly on golf now, but for, someone who was young at the time and, looking
Yeah.
for that experience and those reps, I'm sure that being able to cover a lot of different sports sort of allowed you to generalize, and you could just parachute into these different events and say, I could still write and be hireable at least to employers and what have you.
Yeah, no, you're right. Again, it was another great experience. And it's funny because you look back on it and you think, man, what did I have any business doing covering gymnastics or cheerleading or track and, wrestling? And I covered every sport you can imagine. I mean, it was crazy. And this staff was so dedicated to the local sports
Mm.
that I could go cover a swim meet and my story would be on the front page of the sports section the next day. And this was a pretty big paper. It was about 150,000 circulation at the time. We covered the Mets, the Yankees, and I got to do some of that too. But it really was a focus on high school sports. So again, even though you weren't covering big time sports, you were getting that great exposure and you were seeing your byline in prominent places. It was just really a thrill. And I did that for over 4 years. Again, covered every sport you could imagine, and also spent a lot of time, especially the first couple of years in the office, taking games over the phone, taking the stats input. You'd get a phone call and they'd say, track and field, and be like, okay, is it boys and girls? Yep, boys and girls. All right, buckle in. Be about a 30-minute conversation, typing in who finished third place in the 100-meter dash that day. So I did a lot of different things, but it was good experience. I got to write on deadline a lot. I had to dictate story, Friday night football games from the lighting outside of a school while I'm sitting in my car. Like, you got to do these things that put you under pressure and were really exciting. So again, it was a great experience. And yes, the versatility definitely helped, not only getting to have a beat, you covered different sports, but doing features here and there. Every once in a while, getting to cover a pro event, getting to write a column every once in a while. We did these pro con things that I like to say I was undefeated at with my buddies who I used to work with. So yeah, it was definitely a good experience to get to not just start on one sport, but get to do a lot.
So then how do you end up at Golf Digest?
Again, I mean, pretty lucky, fortunate timing. So a guy I used to work with at the Journal News, Sam Wyman, fantastic writer, won a ton of awards. He was our national golf writer. He also covered the Rangers, big hockey guy. He left the paper to get a job with Golf Digest because he saw the writing on the wall that the paper industry was going to be tough and this and that. I unfortunately did not see that writing on the wall and was a part of a massive layoff. However, Sam had left. I knew him decently well just through covering some stuff. My boss said, you should reach out to him. I always was one of those people who had a tough time doing that, but you really do need to make yourself reach out and network and do all those things. And I did. And he got me an interview for a part-time job with his boss. From there, I came in, I wasn't writing. I probably didn't write anything for the first almost a year that I was there. It was nice just to have a job. It was nice to have a job at Golf Digest, a place where I had applied for jobs for, years and years and never even gotten a call back or anything. So I was just happy to get my foot in the door. And eventually I did get to write some stuff. And the part-time became full-time, and
the rest is history.
So, yeah. Been there for over 10 years. Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and it's amazing. And of course, you're still here today as a senior writer, but I just want to, analyze, because of course everyone remembers Golf Digest, the magazine. Like I remember getting the Golf Digest magazine, whether it was a home subscription or being at an airport or buying that magazine at one of the stores. But when did Alex things start to become more digital? Because it just, it felt like, you mentioned how, the writing was on the wall of the paper back, in the 2000s, but now it just feels like it's, digital is the thing now.
Yeah. No, it's funny. When I first got to Golf Digest, the website was very small. Again, my boss had just been brought on. His boss had even just been brought on. And basically what was on the website was what was in the magazine. And we would put a few things up per day from the magazine throughout the month. And then the next month, it would kind of start a new cycle. So my job was basically production, go into these files, copy and paste the text, the pull quotes, the pictures, and build them up and put them up. There was very little original content at that time. And this was 2009. Yeah, 2009. And nowadays, it's incredible how different it is. And this probably changed. It probably changed at least 8 years ago. I bet I was there for a couple years before the shift to original content on the web happened. And nowadays, it's almost mostly original content. Of course, we still do put some stuff up from the magazine, but definitely not like we used to. And it's amazing just the different feel. When we were first there, it was kind of like the website was like its own little unit that wasn't really connected. Now, like you said, the website is, it's pretty much the biggest thing now at the magazine. Now, don't get me wrong, we still need that Golf Digest brand and that magazine that's out in front. That's what drives people there. But in terms of what makes the money and everything else, there has been a huge shift where the website has probably taken the lead on that. So we're not just a little, part of the company anymore. We're a huge integral part of the company. Not that we all work together, of course, but it is funny how that has changed through the years. And again, I was lucky in that I was kind of in on the ground floor with my boss, Sam. And from those early days, we're the two people who have been there the entire time. And now we have a much bigger staff than I could have ever imagined. And, it's really exciting to look around and see how much we've grown. We've grown to, not to toot ourselves too much, we've grown to be the number one website in golf. And when I first got there, we were probably like 5 or 6. So it's been an incredible 10 years. But yes, the shift has been dramatic, and it's been exciting to be a part of.
Well, and I also think too, Alex, there's just a shift in how content is produced. You look at, back when you started, writing articles, that was, the thing. But now with social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok now, there's a lot of different opportunities to create that video content. Like I in preparing for this interview, watch, some of your episodes of The Grind, on YouTube. And some of those episodes were like 4 or 5 years old. And it's like amazing
Right.
that, some of those trends are,
Right.
now required today and are just, introducing more younger golf fans to the game because, most people say, wow, golf, it's, a lot of older people watch it and like it, but now more golf, younger people are liking it because of these various new ways to produce engaging content.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope so. That's certainly the theory behind that. And yeah, I'm trying to, I think this is the 5th year we've done the video grind. I've done the grind column, I think, for 8 years. And at one point, one of our camera guys, Ben Walton, came to me and was like, why don't we do a video? And I was like, you're crazy, man. No way would this work. And I'm really thankful that he kind of took the initiative on that. And we kind of did it on our own, filmed it and threw it out there to our bosses, and they liked it. And, almost 5 years later, we're still doing these videos. So it is amazing that when I first started working there, we weren't even doing original writing content much on the site. Now we're doing, like you said, all these different things, the videos and the podcasts and things that just weren't even really on the horizon when I first started working there. So it is amazing how much things have changed. But I also think they've gotten better because, like you said, I mean, there's so many new ways now to reach the audience, to reach new audiences. We see, totally different audiences read our magazine versus go on our website or go on our podcast or watch my videos. It's just, you're reaching different people through each of these platforms. So it's incredible how much things have changed, but I do think it's gotten better. And I think it's gotten better for us because it's more exciting and we can get to do different things. I think it's gotten better for the reader / viewer, whatever you want to call consumer out there as well. They have a lot more things to look at.
So, Alex, it's a normal calendar year for the PGA Tour. There's no pandemic. What is your normal calendar of events? Like, do you go on the road to all the majors? Do you get to pick certain, tournaments or assignments that aren't, majors, but you want to, feature a golfer? What is sort of a year like for Alex Myers in terms of covering the PGA Tour?
Yeah, I mean, I usually end up going to 3 of the 4 majors, I'd say, and then probably the Ryder Cup or the President's Cup, depending on the year. And then, we have a couple local events in the tri-state area, so I'll go to those 2. Although now the one in New York is going to rotate between New York and Boston, but again, typical. So yeah, I don't get to a ton of events, but I get to enough, I think, where I get that taste, because it is great to go to these events. I will say though, since I have a daughter now, 2-year-old daughter, it's gotten tougher to leave the home. So, whereas I used to love to go, I would have traveled a lot more. Now it's it is tougher to do it. But again, I'm lucky in that I don't have to go too much. That being said, before this craziness happened, we were all told that our travel budget was going to increase and we were going to get to go to more things. And so that was kind of like, and maybe not necessarily even tournaments, but maybe go on the road to do a story here or there. I did do that last year. I went to Carlsbad. It was fun because my parents lived there, but I went to Carlsbad. I did a story on Bob Vokey, who makes these wedges, and a story on getting scripted for a major. I went to Adidas and they walked me through. So I went to San Diego for 2 days and I did these 2 stories. So anyway, the point is we were going to have more opportunities to do that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden this happened. And so I don't know what's going to happen when we return, but I would assume that it would go back to at least the old way. And then again, hopefully there'd be more things to pop up. But yeah, I'm lucky. I get to go to some of the best events. I was definitely going to go to the Masters. I hope I still get to in November. We'll see what happens with the restrictions on the amount of media that's going to be allowed to go to these events too. So that might determine things as well.
Well, it actually follows up nicely with my next question because, maybe leaving, pandemic aside, because that presents its whole, set of challenges in terms of restrictions, but just in
Yeah.
general, Alex, like compared to when you first started covering golf to now, how has it become more challenging as a journalist? Because I've had a few guests on my show, who cover different sports, and of course, access has really been reduced over the years. And I think just inherently, I find more probably challenging to cover, let's say, baseball or football, where you're dealing with different teams and public
Yeah.
relations staffs, whereas with golf tournaments, you're dealing with the players, and of course, you're
Right.
dealing with the PGA Tour and the tournaments, but in general, you're dealing with the players. So I'm just curious if you can maybe provide some insight just in terms of how it's changed the coverage, and has it been more challenging for you to create new content?
In terms of dealing with actual players, yes, it is definitely become more challenging. That being said, I wasn't really covering the players when it was a lot easier and they were a lot more accessible. So I've just heard more of the stories about, oh
Mm,
man, it used to be so much easier, Um, but that being said, it definitely is tricky sometimes to get certain players. And what's tough is that it's really a lot of the agents, and we all understand they're doing their job, but it does seem to be like a lot of the times they're overprotective, and when you actually approach the player themselves, they're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. And
mm,
meanwhile, you've been shot down 5 times by the agent. So, there is a little bit of a disconnect there. I mean, they want to feel like they're earning their money too. And so they want to be
mm.
that kind of barrier for the player. But that's um, definitely been a challenge, especially, and sometimes you do have to lean on an older writer who has some of these contacts, or can go way back with the player, because they do have a relationship with them. It is interesting that we are in this time where a lot of younger writers, and I feel like I'm kind of in the middle here, don't have probably the same number and deep of relationships as the older writers used to with the players, because first of all, they used to travel a lot more, but second of all, again, there used to be a lot more access, and so they really got to know their subject matter a lot better. And I think that's true in all the sports. That being said, though, in terms of creating content, I actually think we're in the boom years because of social media and everything else. So while you might not get the one-on-one with a player, you see them um, telling you about their life through social media in ways that we never used to see before. And that creates, maybe not the serious content, but definitely the fun stuff. And so in that way, there's so many more ways to find different story angles from things that are out there.
Building off of that, because of course, you were at Golf Digest, in the last decade, the 2010s decade, and of course, Tiger won in 2019, and when we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But for the majority of that decade, I mean, Tiger, despite being injured or not playing, he still hovered over the game of golf. And I'm just curious for you as a writer, was it challenging to write content where, a lot of people may not necessarily, view it because, they're like, okay, I watch only because of Tiger Woods, and
Right.
whether, and no offense to, let's say, Jordan Spieth or these other really great stories, but they're
Right.
just not Tiger, and they're not that name. Did you ever, come across that in terms of, of course, you kept writing, but I mean, just people, not following the game as much in those 2010s years?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a period of that for sure. And then fortunately, we did have this nice little crop come through with Rory and then Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas and even Jason Day. And you kind of said, wow, there are a lot of great young players out there, and there are people to get excited about. Now, yes, to your point, no one gets people as excited about golf as Tiger. And it could be Tiger, not even at his peak or even close. It just him showing up gets people
Yeah.
to tune in more than so you're right. We always kind of hope that he would come back for sure. Don't get me wrong. But I think we did find at one point, okay, people finally think Tiger is done. They've kind of moved on. Are the numbers down a little bit? Maybe, but hopefully from here they'll grow. And then Tiger came back into the mix, and now it's just, and we just hope that it can last as long as possible. And we can keep. I like to joke in the office, milk the goat. That's our strategy, milk the goat. And I hate to say it like that, but it's true. He is the goat, and people are fascinated with him. And it's funny because you'll see these people chime in and say, stop talking about Tiger. Nobody cares. And you want to be like, you want to see our numbers?
Yeah.
People care. I mean, you want to look at TV ratings? People care. And they care about him more than anybody else. It's not even close. So we're, fingers crossed that he can stick around a few years longer. Obviously what he did last year and was the best thing I've ever seen in person by far. The best thing that most even old sports writers have seen in person. It was just an incredible story, a comeback story for him to win it at the Masters like that. And it definitely injected a lot of energy into the game. And yeah, we're still riding high from it.
No, absolutely. And to me, what's fascinating about that period, Alex, is because, you think of 2018 where, he does, okay at Valspar, and, he sort of makes that Sunday charge of the players. And then, the Open, he's, in the lead on the back nine. The PGA, he's in the mix. And then I had the chance to cover Tiger at the Tour Championship in 2018 when he won his 80th. And it was that, I had the chance to get greenside. I don't know if I was allowed, so I don't know if I broke some kind of, credential rule, but I found a way to get greenside. And see the hordes of people on the fairway and him walking up.
So cool.
Insane, what an insane moment. But then the Masters 2019 and you wrote a really amazing article because I feel like a lot of people can take writing such a historical moment in different ways. They could talk about the round itself. They could talk about, Tiger's win in context of his other wins. But you, I think, what made so special with your piece is you sort of encapsulate what a lot of young Tiger fans felt watching that day. And, there's the old rule where, you don't want to inject yourself into the journalism story. But I think in this rare circumstance, given your connection covering the game and covering Tiger in just the moment, I just think it connected with a lot of people because that's how they felt watching the return to glory, as Mr. Nance said.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And yeah, it was, it's funny because obviously these golfers have such long career spans that, you could be a kid watching Tiger, but then you could end up being a senior writer at Golf Digest in that same career of a player. So, as much as and don't get me wrong, if you saw me at a tournament, you would not see me fist pumping or whatever out on the course. Maybe if I'm sitting in the press room, there's a little under the table, something like that. But it's not like I'm able to separate that. Don't get me wrong, but it's impossible not to remember those feelings that you had watching the '97 Masters, in your house growing up and just getting so into that. And then all the other amazing moments that Tiger gave us. And outside of my grandpa who got me actually into the sport before Tiger came along, Tiger was clearly the next figure that, got me really hooked on the game and frankly grew the, golf industry to such a level that a lot of people, including myself, that's the reason why we even probably have jobs in the golf industry. So we all owe Tiger so much. And I know most of the players realize that obviously because the purses they're playing for are so much more, but we all owe him so much. So it is tough then to see him go through a decade really of such disappointment. And of course it happened to be right when I really get into covering golf. And I never really got to see him win the Players in 2013. And that was kind of when he had, reascended to number one in the world. But of course he never won a major again. And it was always kind of like, man, this really is not going to happen again. And so for him to actually do it, I couldn't not write about those feelings, those conflicted feelings of, hey, I got to stay professional here, but hey, I'm also this, 14-year-old kid or whatever watching the Masters in 97 and getting all into it and all that. So I hope I kind of explained myself there and conducted myself professionally enough. But yeah, it was definitely something I'll never forget. And man, I was so lucky I was able to be there for that. And even though I didn't get to see anything on 18 because the crowds were just so crazy and you don't have any inside the ropes access at the Masters, I was right there when he walked by to sign his scorecard, and just the atmosphere is something I'll never forget. So yeah, that was really neat.
So you're greenside, you watch Tiger, go sign a scorecard. You're
Yeah.
swallowed by all this crowd noise, chants of
Yeah.
Tiger, and a real roar that we haven't seen in Augusta for so many years. Are you already, as a writer, thinking about you as that, kid at the 1997 Masters and how you're laying that out? Or, when does that process sort of, or is he walking back to the media center? Like, I mean, how does that happen in such a huge historical moment?
Yeah, well, for that one in particular, it was kind of like I knew I would write something, but I'd probably give it a couple days to think about what exactly. In the meantime, I think I probably did 3 or 4 small things that night based on just little things that came up. The hot topic that week was Tiger chewing that gum.
Yeah.
So I did a follow up on that. Believe it or not, those were like the 2 most read stories on our website that week. 2 stories about Tiger chewing gum. That's what this guy does. That's how much he gets the fans in it. So right then I allowed myself to really take it all in because of how special it was. But you're right. Usually when I do go out, when I do leave the confines of the press center, I feel like as much as I want to watch, I also should be already thinking ahead and starting to plan about what to write next. And I always have my notepad there, or at Augusta, you can't take out your phone. Usually I take out my phone and just get in my notes and start writing stuff. I remember a couple years before I had ran out there for the playoff between Sergio and Justin Rose. And it was a similar situation. I couldn't see anything. So I kind of wrote a story about not being able to see anything. And so the whole time I was out there, I was just taking notes. And so, yeah, I like to think that I'm always kind of working. But for those 15, 20 minutes there, when Tiger won, I definitely just kind of turned it off and just enjoyed it.
Last question for you, Alex. It has to do with, because a lot of my listeners are young journalists, writers looking to break into the industry. And of course, it's a lot, harder today and, given a lot of budget reductions and whatnot. But
Sure.
do you think that a young aspiring journalist writer can be, focus, specifically on golf and, have a successful career like you did? Or do you think that they need to, use golf, but then be versatile in other sports as well in order to progress in their career?
Well, yeah, the only thing I would worry about is if you got pigeonholed as just being a golf writer and then you needed to apply to cover something else and they just thought, oh, you don't really have the experience. And yet, so many of us, we might focus on one sport, but we're sports fans. We know what ticks, how sports work in general, which is why I was able to cover gymnastics. I mean, when it comes down to it, there's winners, there's losers, you cover that sort of thing. But, I do think it's probably better to get experience doing a few different sports, but more importantly than that, especially now, is when I first went to the newspaper, it was kind of like you went to a newspaper, you learned how to write articles on deadline. Now you need to learn how to do podcasts, how to do videos, how to be an effective tweeter and Instagram. I mean, these are things that I'm still figuring out that I can learn from better people than me every day. And so that's where I think now it is tougher probably even than ever, but you do have more avenues to get in and to get noticed. So I think the key is obviously to show off your skills in a variety of ways, of different platforms. obviously show you're a hard worker, obviously show that you're willing to work when others are not working, to be on call on the weekends and at night and do all that. But to just keep constantly a constant flow of content, because that way, once you shut it off, it's kind of tough to get back into it. But you just keep going, keep producing, show that you're a hard worker, a creative person, that you don't need to be pitched ideas, that you're the one pitching the ideas. I think that, there'll always be jobs for people like that who can prove themselves and work hard. I mean, that's just the way to do it. And then, yeah, it helps to get lucky and know the right people and everything else. Don't get me wrong. But I think there are plenty of opportunities out there, just starting your own blog, starting your own podcast, starting your own YouTube videos to get noticed and to work your way into this business.
Alex Myers, he's a senior golf writer at Golf Digest. Alex, thanks so much for joining me today on the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles.
You got it, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.